Hello, and welcome to the FinBiz 2030 Building Resilience podcast series. This episode features highlights from the Courage in Adversity webinar hosted by Lyle Malanda and Mandy Mujnik. In this short episode, we hear from Dr. Mosima Mabunda, Head of Vitality Wellness at Discovery Limited, with an inspiring story that is the very definition of resilience.
Good evening, and thank you once again for having me. It's really an honor to be here. The story that I want to share came in the form of what was an exciting opportunity for my husband and I in 2008, where we had an expatriate contract to move to London for 2 years. Given that the opportunity came at a time when I was planning to do my MBA locally, I decided that I'm going to seize the opportunity, and in the 2 years that I'm in the UK, I'm going to actually study at Oxford and get my MBA there. Challenge became, at the time when we were moving, I was 7 months pregnant. And given that I didn't have the funds to do the MBA, I had to make sure that I apply in the first cycle of applications so I can apply for a scholarship. So that meant I had to do my GMAT on the due date that my son was meant to be born. Thankfully, he aligned with my plans and decided to come 3 weeks later. So I was able to get the GMAT. So I overcame that challenge. And then now that I had to go for interviews, I was exclusively breastfeeding and we didn't have a helper. Managed to convince my husband to take leave, and we all drove to Oxford. And fortunately, there's a pub right outside of Said where I had to breastfeed just before the interview. And I left my 3-month-old son with my husband to go for the interview. That went well. So second challenge went well, got accepted into Oxford. My financial plan for the MBA was a scholarship. Then the financial crisis hit. Now we've got no money and no means to actually afford this thing that I've actually worked so hard for that seemed to be coming together. But we decided that, you know what, having been raised by a single mom, having seen her overcome things where, frankly, I had no clue how she did it, where every day you just wonder what's going to happen tomorrow, but somehow she always had a plan. And despite what externally looked like we were deprived, I've always felt privileged. I said, I'm going to continue and something is going to happen. So thankfully, we managed to find the capital on the second day of registration. I've asked Oxford to give me time until end of September. Thankfully, second day after registration, we managed to find the £33,000 for me to continue. So that's the third hurdle overcome. That was exciting. I wasn't going to get expelled. And then now I needed the funds to continue to study. That is close to 10 to 15,000 pounds to pay for the books, and just the living expenses of studying in the MBA. Fortunately, after I got accepted, I did my exams and I practiced medicine in the UK. Then my only source of income that I could tap into at the moment was working locums after hours and on weekends. So that became my MBA life, where from Thursday night until Sunday, I would leave campus and go work and not partake in some of the social initiatives of the program. There may have been people who thought, oh, Mosima is so antisocial. I didn't want to make my burdens others, and I was quite conscious to not want to be a victim in a pity case from Africa. So I worked throughout the MBA, barely saw my son, battled to get used to the system in the UK where it's called childminders, where you leave your child with people that are registered with Ofsted, but really it's in someone's house culturally and otherwise. It's things that would not have been familiar with, but I just had to keep going because that's the only way I could go to school and my husband would go to work. And I told myself that it's a year, it will end and something will come out of it. I'm not going to say it was easy. I've switched between seeing it as an opportunity, which was the growth that came out of it. But there were moments where I would sit, and I remember I was at Tommy's at St. Thomas in Casualty, going up to the ward where my back was killing me. And I remember wanting to cry and say, dear Lord, this better be worth it in one shape or form, because honestly, this is hard work. I don't imagine all of my classmates are going through that, but those moments were brief, but they did come. In the end, I've grown to be very grateful for that experience. It actually took a while for me to actually reflect back to see how that has shaped me into the person that I am. So what I took out of that experience, honestly, is you have more capacity than you realize. Sometimes it takes being pushed against a wall to actually realize that you have a lot more than you realize. The second thing that I took away from it is what looks like a closed door and what looks like a wall, it's actually a growth opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to show up differently and try different things. There's always a way. So I've learned that there's always a way. What looks like a closed door is not the end of the road. What looks like the edge of a cliff is not there's always a way. And because for me, completing the MBA it had to happen. There was no, I could backtrack. Every single thing that happened in that journey forced me to actually show up differently and embrace it as an opportunity for me to grow and do things differently. And in that year, I can guarantee you, with everything I've been through, I've managed to, challenging as it was, to get to the end goal, which is complete the MBA.
To hear more podcasts or to find out more about FinBiz 2030, go to finbiz2030.com. Join the conversation using hashtag FinBiz2030. FinBiz 2030 is a joint initiative between One Young World and Chartered Accountants Worldwide. This podcast is produced by Big Top Multimedia. The original webinar series was produced by Be There Productions and Big Top Multimedia. Special thanks to Pexels.com.